My sister always teased me for living paycheck to paycheck, especially after she bought that beach house. When she invited me to her housewarming, I showed up as the new owner's financial consultant. "Why is she here?" she screamed, but the contract was already signed. I'm 46. I've been a high school math teacher for 2 decades. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in a part of town where the houses are close together and the trees are older than any of us. My life was, for a long time, stable, unremarkable, not bad, not great. I was married for 17 years to a man named Marcus. No kids, just a dog who, incidentally, had better emotional intelligence than half the people in my life. From the outside, our marriage looked normal. We weren't romantic, but we weren't hostile. We coexisted. Marcus worked as a regional sales rep for a furniture distributor, so he traveled a lot. I kept the house together. Paid the bills, cooked the meals. I used to joke that we were two branches on the same tree, but we grew in opposite directions. The real story starts with his mother, Alma. If you've ever met someone who gives you a smile that feels like a slap in the face, that's Alma. From the very first time I met her, I felt like I was on trial. When Marcus and I were still dating, she asked me, straight-faced, if my teaching salary could support her son's expectations. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. Alma was a widow, very involved in her church, and even more involved in her son's life. I once heard her refer to Marcus as her greatest blessing and oldest companion. I wasn't the jealous type, but I'd be lying if I said their relationship didn't feel unhealthy. Then there was my sister Fallon, younger than me by 4 years, blonde, ambitious, and exhausting. Fallon went into finance straight out of college, then married a man named Lionel who looked like a younger version of Jeff Bezos with worse taste in shirts. They lived in Manhattan, and then, once COVID hit and work went remote, they moved into a beachfront house in Charleston. It was plastered all over her Instagram with hashtags like Coastal Queen and #MortgageFreeMonday. Fallon loved to tease me about my life choices. "I swear you've had that Honda since college," she once said at Thanksgiving. "Do teachers get lifetime warranty plans or just eternal optimism?" Marcus laughed. A little too hard. I laughed too, but inside I died a little. She always had a way of making me feel like I was falling behind, but I kept going. I paid my bills, I showed up to work. I packed Marcus's lunches, and I folded his socks in perfect little rolls, and I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. Then came the Gatlinburg trip. Alma organized it as a family healing retreat after the pandemic. A cabin in the Smoky Mountains. I didn't want to go, something in me knew this wasn't going to be relaxing, but Marcus begged. So I took time off, packed a bag, and joined them in Tennessee. The first red flag. Alma had matching shirts made for everyone. Mine said, "In-law and still an outlaw." It was 2 sizes too big. Everyone laughed, I smiled, but my chest burned the whole time. Later that evening, she called everyone into the living room to show off a slideshow she'd made, her digital family legacy album, as she called it. She'd printed copies for everyone to take home. The photos were lovely. Candid shots of everyone, Marcus at the grill, Fallon sipping wine. Alma is surrounded by grandkids from Marcus's sister, Evan Lionel posing dramatically on a paddleboard, but I wasn't in a single photo, not one. I'd uploaded some to the shared drive the night before, our wedding photo, a picture of me and Marcus on a hike, me making pancakes on Christmas morning. All gone. "Alma," I asked as calmly as I could, "what happened to the photos I added?" She waved her hand. "Oh, sweetheart, those were just duplicates. I wanted to keep it clean." No one said a word. Marcus didn't even look at me. I walked out of the cabin, sat on the porch, and stared at the fog until my hands stopped shaking. That was the beginning of the end. When we got back home, I suggested couples therapy. Marcus agreed, but he never took it seriously. Every session ended with him defending his mother, claiming I was sensitive and too reactive. A month later, I found messages from a woman named Tori on his phone. "Tori, you're still letting her live there. Just say the word." I took a screenshot, emailed it to myself, and made a quiet plan. 3 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Marcus cried, tried to gaslight me into believing it was just texting. Said he was confused. I was not. I moved out of our home and into a 2-bedroom rental with nothing but a mattress and a folding table. I left the dog with him. I couldn't bear to see her sad every time I left for work. But the worst part, During the financial disclosures, I discovered he'd drained our joint account. Said he used some of it to help Mom with her roof, and the rest to handle expenses during his personal crisis. In reality, he'd taken Tori on a trip to Cancun and put a deposit down on a hot tub. I started over with $4,000 to my name, a used couch, and 2 folding chairs from Craigslist. Fallon called me then, offering advice. "Well, maybe now you can finally figure out what you want instead of what you settled for," she said, between sips of something expensive. I didn't respond. What she didn't know was that I'd already begun tutoring in the evenings. First, it was local students, then their parents, then friends of friends. Soon I was helping people budget, file taxes, clean up their credit. Word of mouth spread, and a local investor named Dahlia hired me full-time to manage her finances. The irony: I was making more money consulting part-time than I ever did teaching full-time. I eventually quit the school and went all in. Opened my own LLC, started a retirement fund, paid off every cent of debt I had. Then Dahlia came to me with a new property deal in Charleston. A foreclosure, quiet listing. Beachfront, it was Fallon's house. I didn't believe it at first. I double-checked the address, the owner's name, everything. But there it was, plain as day in the documents, Fallon R. Mercer, defaulted mortgage, lien notices filed, final notice served 3 months prior. Her golden empire had cracks. I didn't ask Dahlia how she got the lead, and she didn't ask why I was staring at the screen like I'd seen a ghost. She just said, "You think it's a good buy?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's underpriced. She must have needed to liquidate quickly." Dahlia smirked. "I love desperation. Draft up the paperwork." That night, I barely slept. Not from guilt, but from adrenaline. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but I wasn't sorry either. I spent years being overlooked, talked down to, erased. And now I was in the position to help my client acquire the very thing my sister flaunted as a symbol of superiority. I was methodical, quiet. The purchase closed fast. Fallon probably thought the buyer was just some anonymous investor. And then, a week after the ink dried, she texted me out of nowhere. "Fallon, housewarming next weekend, you should come. New chapter, fresh start?" I read it 3 times. Part of me thought it was a trap, but a larger part of me smiled. Sure, I'd love to see the place again. I drove down from Asheville that Saturday morning in my beat-up Civic, still running, by the way, and wore a soft linen dress with flat shoes. Nothing flashy, nothing Fallon could sniff at. I arrived early as planned. Dahlia and I parked a block away and walked the rest. She was dressed in her usual chic minimalist style, wide-legged slacks, white blouse, dark sunglasses. The house looked just like Fallon's Instagram feed. Tall ceilings, driftwood decor, wicker chairs that screamed, "I've never been sat in." Guests were already filtering in. Jazz floated out from hidden speakers. She had a catering company serving shrimp ceviche in martini glasses. When Fallon saw me walk in, her smile froze. "Nadine, what are you?" Her eyes darted behind me and landed on Dahlia. "Wait. Who's she?" Dahlia stepped forward, calm and polite. "I'm Dahlia McCann. Nice to meet you." Fallon blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, but this is my house." Dahlia tilted her head, almost apologetic. "It was. As of yesterday, it belongs to my portfolio." There was a silence so dense you could hear the ice clink in nearby glasses. Fallon's face went white, then red, then something in between. What do you mean?" "We're hosting a party." I handed her a folder. "It's all there," I said. "You'll have a few days to transition out." Dahlia was generous with the timeline. Fallon didn't take the folder. She just stared at me, stunned. "You knew," she whispered. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. She stormed into the house, leaving a trail of murmurs behind her. A few guests tried to pretend they hadn't heard anything. Some just looked at me, then at Dahlia, then at the house, as if the walls themselves had betrayed them. I stepped outside onto the back deck. The sea breeze hit my face, and I breathed it in like medicine. I didn't feel triumphant, not exactly. I just felt seen. Like for the first time in years, I wasn't someone's afterthought. Fallon came back out a few minutes later, face stiff, voice low. "You're here to humiliate me," she hissed. I shook my head. "I'm here to do my job." "I invited you to try and reconnect," she spat. "No," I said, and this part came out without me planning it. "You invited me to remind yourself that you were still on top." She flinched, just barely. Then she turned and walked inside again. We didn't stay long. Dahlia didn't care for awkward social scenes, and I didn't need to witness Fallen unraveling any further. On the drive back to Asheville, I watched the sun dip below the horizon in the side mirror. Dahlia talked about renovating the kitchen, adding a sauna, maybe turning the guest house into an Airbnb. I just nodded, half listening, my thoughts miles away. It wasn't until the next morning, sitting on my front porch with coffee in hand, that it really hit me. Not the pettiness, not revenge, the shift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't at the mercy of someone else's validation. I wasn't begging to be seen. I wasn't tolerating crumbs of attention. I had taken everything they tried to use against me, my quiet, my patience, my frugality, and turned it into something they couldn't touch. Fallen didn't message me after that. No apology, no tantrum, just silence. Marcus, by the way, tried to text me when he heard about it. Just a casual, "Hey, saw something about your sister's house. You okay?" I didn't respond. Not out of spite, just no interest. There was a time when I would have written long, careful messages trying to explain myself. A time when I'd hope someone would finally say, "Wow, Nadine, you were right." But now I didn't need the last word. I had the whole sentence. About 2 weeks after the housewarming debacle, I got an email from Fallen. Subject, clarification. That was it. Not hi, not I owe you an apology, just clarification. Classic, I opened it anyway. Nadine, I'm still confused about how this happened. I was under the impression the sale was paused. Lionel had been working something out with the bank. I don't know why you were involved, but I'm assuming you were just doing your job. I'd appreciate it if we could keep this matter private. Families shouldn't make each other look bad, especially not in public. No apology, no acknowledgement, no accountability. I stared at the screen for a minute, then closed my laptop without replying. Because that email told me everything I needed to know. Fallen was still trying to control the narrative. Still performing. Still Fallen, but me. I'd already moved on. The story didn't end there, though. Shortly after the purchase, Dahlia asked if I'd be interested in managing more of her Charleston properties. She trusted me, and she wanted someone on the ground she could rely on. I told her I wasn't sure. I loved Asheville. I loved my quiet garden, my neighbors, my Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. But something inside me itched to stretch. I didn't rush the decision. I took long walks, made pro-con lists, and meditated over tea. I even visited Charleston again, this time without tension in my chest. I walked the cobblestone streets, checked out some art galleries, and ended up having a quiet dinner at a small bistro where no one knew me, no one expected anything. By the time dessert arrived, I had made up my mind. I accepted Dahlia's offer on one condition. I would split my time between Asheville and Charleston. I didn't want to uproot my entire life, just expand it. She agreed. So I bought a modest townhome near Shem Creek. Nothing flashy, just a sunlit place with a balcony and enough space for a reading nook. It had hardwood floors and a view of the marsh, and when I signed the papers, I cried in the parking lot, not because I was sad, but because I couldn't believe I'd done it. I, the woman who used to eat oatmeal for dinner to stretch her paycheck, now owned a second home. And that's when I started getting phone calls. Not from Fallen, but from people who knew Fallen. Old friends, college acquaintances, even a few extended family members. The questions varied. Did you really buy her house? Wait, are you working in finance now? Nadine, I heard you moved to Charleston, Isn't that crazy expensive? They weren't all malicious. Some were curious. Some even sounded proud. And that's when the power shift became real. Because for so long, I lived with this unspoken story in my family that I was the one who never quite got it together. That Fallen was the success. That Alma was the matriarch and Marcus was the prize, and I should be grateful to be included. But now, I wasn't asking to be included anymore. I wasn't playing that game anymore. A few months later, I was invited to a cousin's wedding. Fallen would be there, so would Marcus. I considered skipping it. But then I thought, why should I? I wore a soft blue dress, nothing loud, no designer labels. Just something that fit well and felt like me. When I walked in, Fallen saw me almost immediately. Her posture changed, shoulders back, face neutral, calculating. She approached me near the bar. "So," she said, "I guess you're really doing all right now." I sipped my drink. "I guess I am." She didn't smile. "Well, Lionel and I are taking some time apart, reassessing things." I didn't say I'm sorry, because I wasn't. I just nodded. Then she added, It must feel good what you did, showing up like that. And here was the moment. The temptation to gloat, to unload every insult she'd ever thrown at me, to say something cutting and walk away like I'd won a movie scene. But I didn't, because what would that actually do? I'd already won. So I looked at her steady and said, "It felt good to finally stop letting people walk over me, that's all." She blinked, clearly not expecting that. And then I walked away. Later, during the reception, Marcus tried to corner me by the dessert table. He looked older, tired, like life had taken some of the wind out of him. I didn't gloat with him either. I just let him talk. "I miss the way things used to be," he mumbled. "I don't," I replied, and that was that. It's been a year now. I'm still managing Dahlia's properties, and I've taken on a few new clients too, small business owners, a couple of single parents trying to get their finances in order, a retired couple navigating Medicare options. Work that means something. I spend half the month in Charleston, half in Asheville. I garden, I read, I take myself out to dinner just because. I've made new friends, real ones. I even bought myself a new car, not flashy. Still a Honda, but this one has heated seats. Fallon, as far as I know, is still piecing things together. She moved into a rental, went back to work full-time. She hasn't reached out again, and that's fine by me. Sometimes I look back at the old me, the version of Nadine who smiled through Alma's insults, who laughed politely when Fallon mocked her, who folded Marcus's socks in perfect rolls. And I feel sad for her. But I also feel proud. Because she never stopped trying. And eventually she stopped settling. Some people think revenge has to be loud, dramatic, final, scorched earth. But the best revenge is living a life that makes theirs irrelevant. And that's exactly what I'm doing.